Hey, what's up, guys? This is More Than Sawdust. My name is Chris, and I'm so glad you joined me today. And we've got a fun little project for you. So a few weeks ago, if you've seen it, we did a version of the floating cross. Now, it's out everywhere. It's all over YouTube, all over social media. Super popular kind of woodworking craft build right now. And we did our version, like I said, a few weeks ago. After we posted the videos and posted some pictures on Facebook, I had somebody reach out to me to see if I could make a version of it for them. They gave me creative license, and so we are going to be doing something like this. But we're going to be starting with this pile of scrap pine. Now, we don't want to make it just plain and ordinary, so we're going to kind of ramp it up a little bit, use the laser engraver to make some detailed pieces possibly, and then we're going to rustic and beat it up and make a little farmhouse, which is kind of our style. So sit back, relax, and let's go. So if you were able to see that tiny little photo I just put on the screen about a minute ago, the build that I'm doing for this floating cross for this client kind of looks like an old rustic church house. And so, or at least kind of made to be themed that way. But one of our favorite places to go on vacation, we've been many times, is the Smoky Mountains. And there's a place in the national park there called Cades Cove. And when you go through Cades Cove, it's several miles that you drive through. You can walk it or bike it. Most people drive it. And you drive through, and if you go the right times of the day, you can see bear and plenty of other wildlife and just beautiful scenery, of course. One of my favorite things, along with the animals, of course, but one of my favorite things is the old homes and the old homesteads that are there. And there's quite a bit of them, and of course they're preserved and kept up by the national parks. But man, these things are so cool. And I mean, they have barns, and I mean, they've really done a great job at keeping them intact and where you can walk through them and walk in them. But along with the homes and the homesteads, they also have several small churches there through that pathway. And man, they're just real simple, they're real basic, and not much to them, but it really takes you back to when people just committed themselves to worship and they didn't need anything fancy to do it. So that's kind of the inspiration for this build. So I decided I wanted to make like an old plank floor in this church house. And so I laser engraved some lines on my floorboard, and then you'll see in a little bit we're going to do some like kind of rustic paint over it and see if it comes out looking like old boards. And then this is just going to be my base, so I did it brown. I love this Jacobean. I've said that before on videos. I just love the color of the stain, and so this is like our base, kind of like it was outside on the ground. So representing the earth and the dirt itself. And then we're just going to give the kind of the frame here a quick spray with white. Again, we're going to rough all this up and make it look, try to make it look old, and you know, like it's been out sitting for a long time. And then we get to play with the blowtorch here. We're going to burn some stuff and create some kind of burn marks, and I like using the torch to kind of age things. And let's be honest, playing with fire is just kind of fun. I mean, there's no way to get around that. And this is a safe, controlled way to do it. Alright, and then I'm working out just a little roof for the Old Country Church here. A few little quick brad nails and we're good to go on that. Just some thin plywood here. And it's the cheap plywood, so I thought that actually worked well because You know, it's got some knothole spots and it's not smooth, it's not even. It's got a lot of grain. So I thought it worked perfect to represent kind of this old roof. And here you're going to see one of my many talents. Wait for it. Not quite yet. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ambidextrous with a miter saw. I know, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Do you think I could get some kind of Major League Baseball contract? Would they let me bat because I can use both hands with a miter saw? May need to check into that. Of course, I'm just kidding. Most people can do that. Alright, now we're playing with fire again. Thought I'd burn this top and try to again give it some aged look. And it didn't work the way I wanted to. It worked on part of it, and then I just got a lot of this kind of smoke and residue coming out of the wood, kind of orangish, so assuming the chemical that's in it. But it looked really cool on camera. So you can see here I just kind of gave up on that idea and decided I would just paint it. And I thought, hey, you know what? I've got this grayish silver paint in the shop, and it kind of maybe would look like an old metal roof. And so I just painted it. Of course, you know, left some bare spots, left kind of some places where it looked aged and worn through and dirty, and that actually really turned out well. So again, something that didn't work out ended up coming out better probably when we had to do it in some other way. And then we're going to give this floor of the little church house the same type of treatment. And the idea here was that I did a little burn so it kind of looks dirty and old, and then we're going to roughly put some paint on it, and hopefully we'll see some of those lines coming through, and it maybe will simulate like the floor of an old church house where the paint from the wood floor is worn off over time from being used and walked on and just age. And I decided to put a little ridge cap on top of the roof to just give it a little something else and not make it so simple. And this would have been something they would use back in the day anyways to keep the water out. And so I thought it worked out well. Man, I really like giving an old rustic kind of farmhouse vibe, whether it's with small crafts or with furniture. It kind of fits our brand as a company, and man, I like it because there's really no wrong answers. You can just have fun with it and kind of go crazy sometimes. And here we're gonna just get our sled out and we're gonna start working on the cross itself, and just cut out our marks here and get ourselves set up for doing our half laps so we can make our cross. So I realized watching this back that it would have been a lot better to have a different camera angle on here so you could actually see the wood going over the blade and how the sled functioned in this case. But so my apologies for that. I'll try to keep that in mind next time I use the sled. And of course here we're just sliding the piece of wood down. That way we can continue making that half lap space. And we had kind of a tight fit here, so of course nothing a mallet won't fix, right? And I want to give this cross a old rugged cross type of look. So I'm starting off giving it a coat of black spray paint. And that's going to be kind of my undertone, if you will. And then I thought that was just a cool shot with the shadow there. And then we're going to go back and use this Jacobean stain again, and we're going to go over the black spray paint and really just kind of smear it on. Not worried about getting a great coat, not worried about evenness, just smear it on and then we'll rough it up later once it all dries. And here we're doing our tiny little pinhole that our fishing line is going to run through here in a little bit. And you can actually see it looks bigger than what it was because I had a circle drawn out with my pencil. So we'll go back and clean that up and get rid of the pencil marks and touch up the paint here later. Alright, and now we're just going to drill a hole to fit our split shot sinker in that's going to hold the fishing line. Now on the previous one I used a small washer, and that was a little difficult to get all lined up and sitting flat underneath the base. I saw a few guys online watching some other videos. They used a split shot sinker, and so that's exactly what I'm using. I thought it was a great idea. Fits up in there way better than the washer, and so that's the way we're going to do it from here on out. I tried to get you a shot here where you can see how just well that fits up in the small hole that it takes to hold it. And then you can see the top side here, and you can see I've got my pencil marks around it, so I need to clean those up, and I'll go back and clean those up and touch up the paint around it so it doesn't show as much. And then we just gotta put our magnet here in the top of the little church. Of course, this will be what the floating magic part of the project is. And then I thought I'd do a few more little details using the laser. So I'm making a little sign that's going to go on the above the front entry of the little church building here, and then also a little plaque that sits on the base that's got a Bible verse that kind of fits having an old church house. We've got our old country church sign, and then a verse from Acts, and the book of Acts of course talks about the forming of the church back at that time and the way they worshiped and the way they lived, and so I thought that'd be appropriate for this particular build. Then I'm doing the same thing here. I'm trying to make it look like it was worn. It's been sitting out in the weather all these years. You can kind of see some of the letters, and some of the letters you can't. So kind of sticking with that kind of rustic farmhouse theme and aged and weathered look. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm putting a little colonial maple stain on this to give it a little bit of a golden color. Separate it out a little bit more and make it stand out on the base that I'm going to put it on. And then we got the torch out again, still loving the fire, and we're just going to kind of burn around this thing and try to again give it a little aged and weathered look. I want you to still be able to read it, or want the clients to still be able to read it, but I don't know, I thought this would just add a nice touch to it and give it a little bit of aging and character. And we're going to blame the imaginary cameraman for being off center here. I guess I need to fire that guy. Well, he's the only help I got, so maybe not. And here we go. So far, I think it looks pretty cool. I love how the little sign came out. And the whole thing to me just looks like a little beat up old church house. Or at least a church pavilion in this case. But at one point in time, that's all they were. They had no walls. They would meet anywhere that they could. So I thought it was pretty appropriate. And for the purpose of being the floating cross, this way it can be seen from multiple angles and not just the front. Just cleaning up a little bit and getting some glue squeeze out from behind this little plaque here. And again, man, I really have fun making new stuff look old. I think it's cool. It gives you a chance to play around with a lot of stuff, and again, there's really no wrong answers. I mean, and you know, our style for our company is kind of rustic farmhouse, and so it goes right along with our brand. And the guy we're making this for, him and his wife, they're kind of rustic people too, so it was just perfect, I thought, for this particular build. And at this point, he actually had no idea what I was even making. He just said, make me one of those floating crosses. And I said, anything in particular? He said, no, just whatever, man. I think it's cool. So here we're drilling out that hole in the bottom of the cross and putting our eyelet in. Make sure we get it all the way in there so it helps be a little more invisible when we attach the fishing line to it. Alright, now we're just going to drill out our top hole that our other magnet is going to go in. And I actually honestly should have made this cross just a hair bigger in terms of the width of the individual pieces, because it was pretty tight fit, the size of that hole versus the size of the wood piece there. So, but we got it done, it fit down in there, it worked out well. So we just got to glue our magnet in the top of the cross. And maybe I put a little too much, because as I'm pushing, there's CA glue on my finger. And this is what happens when you have CA glue on your finger, and then you try to use a paper towel to wipe it off. You now have paper towel skin. Yay. But we got it done, and we'll peel it all off later. So now the toughest part for me is threading this fishing line through this little eyelet. I've even got my bifocals on, and man, it's still tough to see it. And I just showed you the take where I got it. It took me a little bit to get it lined up, but here's the part that I had a little difficulty with on the last floating cross build, and it went much smoother today the way that I did it. And so I was able just to get it in one try, get the distance just right where the magnets would create enough to keep it floating, and then we just tied off at the eyelet. So I learned from the first time, and this one went much smoother. But there we go, all finished up our little old country church floating cross build. I thought the roof turned out pretty cool. Like I said, I'd hoped to mimic like a metal roof look. Not exactly, but I think it looks pretty neat still. Looks a little dirty, looks a little worn. Same thing for the columns there and the floor. And then we've got our Bible verse that goes with it. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer. They kept it simple, just like this little old church house. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Take care.